We all encounter stress every day in our lives. Our bodies were made to handle stress in acute situations. However, in today's modern world with chronic stress, it can be very tiresome and can wreak havoc in our body. We will be discussing today how stress affects the body and how the body is trying to whisper and tell us that something is going on, and how do we address the underlying root problem of why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. This is the Dr. Lam Show, and we're here to talk about integrative medicine and also empower you to take control of your health. If you enjoy this show and find it useful, then please hit the like button to subscribe to the Dr. Lam Show, as well as the YouTube channel and podcast. This is the best way to make this show more visible so then other people can use this information. I'm Dr. Jeremy Lam. I'm an internal medicine physician, and I'm also board certified in anti aging and regenerative medicine. And I've spent my medical career working on chronic disease treatment as well as helping people through stress and adrenal fatigue recovery.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Lamb, family medicine physician, board certified in functional and metabolic medicine, and I'm passionate about natural and lifestyle medicine. And today we're going to go through a typical case of how stress can affect someone through all the stages, not only through adrenal fatigue, but through our neuroendometabolic stress response. So first, let's talk about what stress is so we're all on the same page. Our traditional understanding of stress has evolved over so much research, and it's changed over time. We used to think that stress is something that comes from nowhere and just kind of hits you as undefinable. But we know that stress enters our body just like you're entering a house through the five senses: ears, nose, what you see, what you smell, what you hear. And these signals through the five senses are then converted into chemical signals, and these signals go from the brain all the way down to the rest of the body. And it's primarily what we call the neuroendometabolic pathway, that our body responds like an orchestra to the stress that we experience. And this neuroendometabolic stress response is critical because it's a built-in mechanism that we all have. When it works, then you'll be able to deal with stress, whether it's a long day of work, whether you're being screamed at by your boss, or if you have tremendous pressure and financial issues. Your body can fall apart, however, if you're unable to perform those neuroendometabolic stress response functions the way that it's supposed to be. So if stress is too much, or your body can't handle this over a period of time, then your body's internal built-in mechanisms start to malfunction, and then we see problems. Dr. Jeremy, tell us what that means.
So, some of the examples of stress that breaks down some of the circuits is, for example, your hormone circuit, right? If you encounter emotional stress in your life, then estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, they help to regulate anxiousness and irritable moods. However, if you do have that metabolic stress inside of you, then your thyroid and your adrenals, they become dysregulated, and you could have decreased hormone production. And then that can in turn affect your metabolism, can affect your blood sugar, and also kind of your way of fighting off stress with the hormone cortisol. So the adrenals put out your anti-stress hormone cortisol to fight off stressors. And it doesn't matter where stress is coming from. No one can live or survive in this world without a certain amount of stress, which is constructive. The key to understanding is that your body's stress response is strong and it's healthy, and it helps you respond and also grow without you even knowing it. However, if you have balances in your NEM circuit, where let's say you have hormonal circuit imbalance, or if you have a detoxification circuit imbalance, then that's when you start to get symptoms. And one of the initial circuits to really get affected is the hormone circuit, right? And so the body shows subtle signs and symptoms that can be really the body's whispers to you when it's trying to tell you that the circuit and your body is dysfunctioning. And so, Dr. Carey, what is kind of some of the symptoms that show up when they have hormone circuit imbalance?
Yeah, so the hormone circuit have three systems that are responsible: the adrenals, the thyroid, and the gonads, which in females are ovaries and in males they're testes. And so they all work in unison, but some of one or a few of them may be dominantly weak compared to the others. And so when one problematic thing shows up, for whether it's the ovaries or the adrenals, then your thyroid might actually also become imbalanced over time. So, for example, those people who are mostly thyroid dominant in terms of weakness could show up with fatigue, low body temperature, dry skin, and inability to lose weight or hair loss. And this is very classic for people who have thyroid hypothyroid. But on the other hand, if you have a dominant weakness in the ovaries, um, then you might have more emotional swings, mood irritability or instability, PMS symptoms. And so your symptoms tell you a lot. It's not just a matter of deciding which symptom makes sense or not. You have to look at each symptom and see what the physiology of each hormone does, as the adrenals can regulate over 50 hormones, and each of these hormones go to a different pathway. So you want to make sure that all pathways of the ovaries, the adrenals, and the thyroid for the hormone circuit are all working well together. What are some symptoms that people with the adrenal dominance dysfunction might feel, Dr. Jeremy?
Well, those with adrenal dominance, they might be feeling a little bit more irritable. They might be more fragile emotion-wise. They're a little more anxious, and they also get easily triggered by anger. And then those with a reproductive system dominance might have more brain fog, some estrogen dominant symptoms like breast tenderness, irritability, and water retention. Again, those with a thyroid dominant dysfunction might have inability to lose weight, dry skin, nail issues, and constipation. So all of these different dominant organs can present differently. And so that's why it's so important to listen to what your body is telling you and to take a very good history to figure out what circuit you're dominantly dysfunctioning. And so, as you can tell, stress isn't as simple as just relaxing and going on with your life. Every circuit and organ in your body is affected. So, a major change or dysfunction in one of them can have numerous and detrimental effects. So, if you're struggling with trying to understand the whispers of your body and what it's trying to tell you, then contact our team at 714-709-8000 for a free initial phone call. And so let's go deeply into those changes and look at the health problems that are associated with stress and how it affects your body.
We talked about the neuroendometabolic stress response and how it can progress and what the symptoms really mean. And we can actually go through of a typical presentation of someone who has this NEM, neuroendometabolic malfunction. For example, Jane, a 52-year-old female, presents with fatigue, and that's her main complaint. For the past few years, she's been needing a cup of coffee every morning, and in that cup of coffee, she puts 2 tablespoons of sugar. She loves sweets, and she gets hungry really quickly, even eats high carb meals. And then she starts noticing that she has some weight gain around the belly and is now starting to crave some salty foods, which might not totally agree with her GI system, but she still continues to eat. Does this sound like someone normal to you? On the surface, it might not sound like much, but if you really understand the physiology that we described earlier and tie it together, this is the early steps and stages of the neuroendometabolic stress response that can be happening, where signs of increased metabolic demand are plentiful if you look at what's being described, the sugar craving. What does the sugar craving mean, Dr. Jeremy?
Well, that means the body is requiring to need more energy. And why? Because energy is required to overcome stress as far as the body's concerned. So that's the component regarding, the sugar craving. Now, the central weight gain, especially in the muffin top. Why? And because the adrenals are focused on retaining the weight because it wants to conserve energy and slow down. And most of it goes to the central portion because that's where cortisol is made. And so these are metabolically driven events, and they're not very intense at first, they're very subtle. So don't just write them off because the body's already telling you that something is wrong inside. They often go unnoticed. And so, the metabolic circuit is already being activated. And next, the bioenergetic circuit will be activated, but to a lesser degree. And some of those symptoms can include little low blood pressure, instability or getting that lightheadedness when you stand, craving salt or mild electrolyte imbalances. But again, they're all pretty mild because it's just in the beginning phases of when your body is getting dysregulated. So, Dr. Carey, tell us more about what Jane is going through.
Right. As Jane continues her job and she gets a little more stressed at work, as who doesn't, she gets a little more nervous, especially when she goes to bed at night. She feels her heart pounding really loudly at night. And despite being very tired, she can't fall asleep. And sometimes she just wakes up multiple times at night, even though she's so tired. So she might be taking more sleepy time teas or some melatonin to help her get to bed. But sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And when she goes through menopause, it's actually pretty rough on her as she starts getting hot flashes, dry skin, vaginal dryness, and trying to exercise tires her out even easier. And even though she goes to her doctors and asks if there's anything wrong because of her fatigue, everything comes back normal. So this is not only about Jane. A lot of male also have these same problems as they feel their libido going down, their ability to exercise actually also reduces, and they feel drained at the end of the day. Um, these are really subtle signs. And so, what is going on with this neuroendometabolic stress response? You're stepping into the second phase of what is called overdrive. Dr. Jeremy, tell us a little more.
As the stress continues to go on, remember that there are six system components. And so they become more activated and they become more in demand. And now the neuroendocrine component is going to start being dysregulated. The cardionomic circuit, could lead to nervousness, occasional palpitations, skip beats here and there. Your neuroaffect circuit becomes more involved due to the trouble sleeping, with the body being more wired. Even though you're tired, you can fall asleep after a little while, but then you wake up, like routine clockwork every 2 or 3 hours. The hormone circuit also becomes more of a problem. In females, the OAT axis or the ovarian adrenal thyroid axis imbalance, as well as menopause, can cause fatigue. And in males, again, reduced libido and exercise intolerance. So that's phase two, where there's a prominence in the neuroendocrine component that starts to surface more and more. And so most of these symptoms where people complain of this overdrive phase consist of neuroendocrine symptoms like I just mentioned. Now let's keep on going and see how Jane keeps dealing with what's going on.
So you kind of go into the exhaustion phase as Jane tries to take some herbs and glandulars and vitamins. She might feel better for just a little bit, but then her symptoms worsen again. Multiple fatigue crashes, especially after big events or family events. And now she has constant heart pounding. The sleep is not getting better with sleep aids. Her brain fog starts to settle in. She has a very hard time concentrating and even becomes more and more sensitive to supplements. And sometimes even they have the opposite reaction of what it's supposed to. Like vitamin C, instead of making her feel better, actually crashed her and she was on the couch for a week. Or she's unable to smell certain perfumes and she gets headaches from that. Or when she's filling up gas in the gas station. And so she tries changing her diet to become gluten free, dairy free, sugar free, but doesn't really last long term. And so this is not funny because it can be very debilitating what she's going through. Uh, and so this exhaustion phase, if you're not controlling the stress well, it will continue to attack you. And so this is after the activation, then the overdrive. The exhaustion phase is probably the most alarming because of the point that the velocity of declining health actually enters its maximum speed. As you get more frequent crashes and you might have to call off work, you can be couch bound, and even just walking around the block can be problematic. And so most people here finally decide to go see their doctor. But like I said, the maybe your health professional is not well intentioned and they try to focus on just a few symptoms rather than the whole picture of the metabolic and the neuroendocrine and the hormone side. And so crashes can become worse if they continue to self navigate or give the wrong items, medications, or supplements to them. And the symptoms can become very convoluted. You go see different specialists and they all don't talk to each other, and so it's a big challenge on how to sort it out. But we have seen many cases like Jane, with the inability to sleep, to feeling tired and wired and lightheaded. And even though your doctor tells you everything is fine, you don't. We understand where you're coming from, because this is where your body is beyond the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. This is where your whole neuroendometabolic stress response is responsible for what you're feeling in stress. Okay. So if you've been experiencing the same things as Jane has been experiencing with stress and unable to get better, going to see your doctor, not knowing where to go, just know that you're not alone as these issues come and go. And if you can't look for help, we are here to help you at Lyme Clinic. And so our team is always available. Call us at 714-709-8000 so we can help you out. Stress can cause adrenal fatigue or worse, the neuroendometabolic stress response. So we want you to make sure that you don't get worse by self-navigating. And there is hope for you. If you like this video on a typical case of how stress can affect someone, and these cases that we see so many times, we ask that you like and share and subscribe to our future videos on the Dr. Lamb Show so that we can get more and more people help just like you. So call us again if you have any questions, and we're here to empower you to take control of your health.